The quiet rural town of Macomb, Oklahoma, woke up to an unsettling silence on the morning of the 16th of September, 2023. For most people, it was just another Saturday. But for Andrea Meave, something was terribly wrong. Every morning, at 7 a.m., she received a call from her younger sister and Makayla Meave. This morning, the phone never rang. Instead, Andrea received a frantic call from Makayla's husband, Frank Byers. His voice was shaking, filled with screaming and sobs. He claimed Makayla had gone out the night before and never returned. According to him, she had left with a bald man driving a white truck, apparently heading out on some kind of date. But even in his panic, something about Frank's story felt off. Makayla and Frank had been heading toward divorce for months. They still lived on the same property, 10 acres of open land, but in separate homes. Makayla had moved into a small shed-like house behind Frank's place. She was done with her marriage, but she wasn't ready to be done with Frank's 4 little daughter's children. She had grown to love deeply. At first, Andrea tried to calm herself. Makayla was technically single. Maybe she stayed the night somewhere. Maybe she just needed space. But as hours passed, and Makayla's phone kept going straight to voicemail, panic replaced hope. Their mother, Barbara Harper, felt something was horribly wrong. Makayla had promised to help at the family restaurant that day, something she would never miss without calling. As Barbara prayed for her daughter's safety, she felt a chilling realization sink in. Something serious has happened. That same afternoon, Frank reported Makayla missing. Deputy Dustin Richardson arrived at the property, body camera recording, wanting to see the scene himself. Frank, strangely calm, yet overly talkative, repeated the same story about the mysterious bald man. He also showed the deputy a Facebook message, supposedly sent by Makayla, telling him she was fine, and to back off. When Richardson asked to check Makayla's small home, Frank said it was locked, and claimed he'd have the key. Moments later, Frank smashed the lock open with a hammer inside. The deputy immediately noticed .22 caliber shell casings scattered on the floor. Frank brushed it off, saying, "Makayla sometimes shot at coyotes." But the explanation felt thin, rehearsed, almost cartoonishly convenient. Meanwhile, friends, neighbors, and Makayla's family were spreading across the property, searching through thick brush and muddy fields with their bare hands. Hours passed, yet not once did Frank join any of the search parties. He stayed on the sidelines, watching, asking more about what police knew than where his wife might be. The sheriff's office elevated the case from missing person to possible foul play, calling in Lieutenant Dakota Black, a skilled tracker known for finding the missing, whether alive or dead. She arrived determined, but she had no idea this case would soon haunt her for the rest of her life. Rehome. End of Part 1. As search teams combed the countryside, and suspicion tightened around Potawatomi County. If Makayla truly left on her own, why was her home filled with bullet casings? And why did her husband show no interest in finding her? As the hours turned into days, the search for Makayla intensified. Flyers spread across Potawatomi County, volunteers trekked through fields and forests, and social media flooded with posts demanding answers. Everyone in the tight-knit community seemed desperate to help. Everyone except one person, Frank Byers. Investigators immediately noticed Frank's behavior. He didn't join the searches, didn't ask to accompany deputies, and didn't even attempt to look through the property himself. Instead, he repeatedly asked officers the same question. "What do you guys know so far?" It didn't feel like the worry of a husband. It felt like the anxiety of a man who wanted to stay ahead of the investigation. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Dakota Black and Detective Marcus May began piecing together a picture of Makayla's life and her marriage. Interviews with family and co-workers painted Makayla as a compassionate woman who adored children, especially her adopted son and daughter. She had spent her life helping kids who needed love, but behind closed doors, her own marriage was far from loving. Frank, as detectives soon learned, had a long history of cheating. His dating profiles, Secret conversations and hotel meetups stretched back years, long before Makayla moved out of their shared home. When confronted, Makayla finally told him she wanted a divorce 2 days before her disappearance. She recorded a conversation, "Lost me." Detectives found that recording. It would soon become one of the most chilling clues of all. By day 3, suspicion toward Frank had grown so strong that he voluntarily came to the sheriff's office for questioning. The interview was audio only. Frank spoke calmly, even casually, insisting he was being unfairly blamed. He repeated the same narrative. Makayla left with a bald man in a white truck. She didn't tell him who the man was. She didn't say where she was going. She simply left. But detectives struggled to believe a word of it. While Frank talked, Makayla's family was breaking apart emotionally. Her mother, Barbara, searched fields wearing snake-proof boots, crawling on her hands and thought of her daughter lying injured, or worse, without help. On the 4th day of searching, Barbara felt something she could hardly put into words. A mother's intuition, she later recalled, hearing Makayla's voice whisper, "Mama, I'm in a tin horn." A tin horn, what locals call the large drainage pipes beneath rural roads. The family searched every drainage pipe they could find. Then came day 5. A cousin and a friend were searching near a ditch about half a mile from Makayla's home when they smelled something foul. Heavy. Unmistakable. They followed the odor to a large metal drainage culvert. Inside, in the darkness, something pale was sticking out. A hand. The 911 call was frantic, shaking, and heart-shattering. "We think we found Makayla." Lieutenant Dakota Black rushed to the scene. What she found would haunt her forever. Makayla was wrapped in carpet, shirt pulled over her face. One sock still on, the one with little teddy bears printed on it. She had been murdered. Rehung. End of part 2. Now detectives face the terrifying question: who killed Makayla, and who helped hide her body in a drainage pipe deep beneath the road? The discovery of Makayla's body sent shockwaves through Potawatomi County. What had begun as a missing person case was now a homicide investigation, and all eyes turned toward the one man whose story never made sense. Frank Byers, Lieutenant Dakota Black, and Detective Marcus May began reconstructing Makayla's final hours. The home security photos recovered from Frank's phone images he thought he deleted showed Makayla entering his house on the day she vanished. She stayed 14 minutes, then she walked out. The final image captured was Frank standing at the door, watching her leave. Minutes later, according to detectives, Frank left his house and walked straight to Makayla's small residence behind the property. That's where they believe he shot her multiple times. Makayla had 3 gunshot wounds. In the forehead, one on the left side of her head, and a graze wound. Detectives found bullet casings on the floor, and later discovered a bullet embedded in the wall, wrapped in what they believed to be strands of Makayla's hair. But at that moment, they still didn't have the forensic confirmation they needed. So they kept digging. As detectives interviewed Makayla's family and friends, a dark picture of Frank began to emerge. Women from Frank's past came forward with disturbing stories. His ex-girlfriend Crystal Cantrell described how Frank isolated her, manipulated her, and once even choking her. She escaped, she never reported it, and now she believes something chilling. "If I'd left, it could've been me." The more Dakota and Marcus learned, the more convinced they became that Makayla had been living in an abrasive relationship without fully realizing the danger she was in. Her family had seen unexplained bruises with the kids. Deep down, they wished they had asked more questions. While the investigators pushed forward, Frank fought back in the court of public opinion. He went on local news, portraying himself as a devastated husband. He said he still tried calling Makayla's phone, even though he knew she would answer. But detectives already had proof that Makayla's phone was in Frank's own bedroom, not in the hands of a mysterious man in a white truck. Then came the most damning discovery. Yet, Makayla had 2 phones. Her primary iPhone, and an older Moto G she didn't use anymore. Frank took the SIM card from her iPhone and inserted it into the old phone, giving himself total access to her Facebook and messaging apps. That meant the message telling Frank to back off wasn't sent by Makayla. It was sent by Frank himself, pretending to be her, attempting to create a false timeline and alibi. He had been trying to rewrite the story, but the truth was unraveling faster than he could keep up. Still, Dakota and Marcus needed a smoking gun, something undeniable, before they could make an arrest. They were waiting on results from two key pieces of evidence sent to the forensic lab: the bullet pulled from Makayla's wall, and Frank's steel-toed work boots, found in his bedroom the night she was reported missing. Weeks passed. Rumors spread. Tension built. Then, on day 38, the call came. Re-hung. End of part 3. The forensic tests revealed something investigators had desperately hoped for, and Frank Byers' darkest lie was finally exposed. 38 days after Makayla Meave first disappeared, Lieutenant Dakota Black and Detective Marcus May finally received the long-awaited forensic report. The results confirmed what they already suspected, that needed scientific proof to act on. First, the bullet recovered from the wall inside Makayla's small home, wrapped in what looked like strands of her hair, could not produce a full DNA profile. But the second piece of evidence changed everything. Frank's work boots, seized the night he reported her missing, had several small stains detectives believed could be blood. Frank worked with chemicals, so it wasn't easy to determine if the stains were from his job or something far darker. The lab results removed all doubt. The stains were Makayla's blood. It was the smoking gun Lieutenant Dakota Black had been waiting for. After minutes, Dakota, Marcus, Deputy Rank a chance to escape. Under the cover of night, they moved in on his house. The flashing red and blue lights reflected across the property. The same place Makayla once called home. The same place her life had ended. Frank stepped outside, stunned and blinking under the bright tactical lights. "I swear I didn't do it," he insisted, as officers placed him in handcuffs. Detective May personally called Makayla's family that night. For her mother, Barbara Harper, it was a moment of bittersweet relief. Justice finally felt within reach. "It won't bring her back," she said, "but at least here's not walking free anymore." With Frank in custody, detectives laid out the case. Step by step, they believed Frank shot Makayla inside her small home shortly after she left his house. They found tire tracks consistent with a vehicle backing up close to the house, likely used to load her body. Interviews with Frank's daughters revealed that the night Makayla vanished, their father was outside for hours, long after they returned home from school. Detectives believed Frank hid Makayla's body in the woods temporarily, then moved her again under the cover of darkness. Eventually, he dragged her lifeless body into the drainage culvert, wrapped inside the carpet a neighbor had given them months earlier. Then he tried to rewrite the story. "I'm inventing a mysterious bald man." He underestimated the investigators. He underestimated Makayla's family. And he underestimated the truth. Frank was charged with first-degree murder, and the district attorney announced he would seek the death penalty. But a year later, after months of legal maneuvering, Frank accepted a plea deal, life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Makayla's mother, the plea deal felt like a betrayal. "He chose how she died," she cried. And then he got to choose his punishment too. Some family members still believe Frank had help moving the body. Detectives say they remain open to that possibility. The investigation isn't close. Not fully, not yet. Today, Makayla's mother has channeled her grief into action. She created Makayla's Purple Butterfly Foundation to help victims of domestic violence, carrying forward her daughter's lifelong mission of protecting the vulnerable. Makayla was a mother, a sister, a daughter, a teacher, and a protector. Her light was stolen, but her legacy lives on. For more than a month, investigators worked day and night to uncover the truth behind Makayla Meave's murder. Leads were followed, interviews were conducted, and timelines were reconstructed. But Lieutenant Dakota Black still felt one crucial piece of the puzzle was missing. They needed undeniable scientific proof tying Frank Byers directly to the crime. On day 38, that proof arrived. The forensic lab sent back two major results. The first, testing the bullet pulled from the wooden wall inside Makayla's small home, was inconclusive. The strands believed to be her hair couldn't generate a reliable DNA profile. But the second piece of evidence was far more revealing. Frank's heavy brown work boots, his wife went missing, contained dark, dried stains along the edges. Detectives suspected blood, but Frank worked an environmental cleanup. Chemicals, rust, fuel, and hazardous materials often stained his clothing and gear, so investigators waited. And now they finally had the answer. The stains on the boots were confirmed to be Makayla's blood. That single result brought the entire investigation into sharp focus. Frank's story had been built on lies. Lies detectives can now tear apart. Within minutes, Dakota and Detective Marcus May assembled a tactical team. The plan was simple. Move fast before Frank suspected anything. Late that night, police vehicles crept quietly toward Frank's home. Floodlights blasted on, and armed officers surrounded the property. Frank stepped outside, stunned and confused, blinking into the bright beams. "I did do any," he insisted. He repeated it over and over. But, for the investigators, the case was no longer about guesses or theories. It was about evidence. Frank was arrested on the spot. Makayla's family received the news within minutes. For her mother, Barbara Harper, it was a moment of overwhelming release. "We can't bring her back," she said through tears, "but at least he will never hurt anyone again." Once Frank was in custody, detectives laid out the timeline with chilling clarity. They believed Frank shot Makayla shortly after she left his house on the 15th of September. The tire tracks behind her shed showed a vehicle had backed up close, likely to move her body. Frank's daughters later told investigators that he spent hours outside that night. Long after they returned home from school, the detectives believe Frank temporarily hid Makayla's body before moving it again later in the night. Wrapped in a carpet gifted by a neighbor months earlier, Makayla was dragged into the drainage culvert where she was later found. Meanwhile, Frank crafted an elaborate cover story, switching SIM cards, faking messages from her phone, deleting security footage, and inventing a mysterious bald man who never existed. But lies can only survive until evidence speaks. Frank was charged with first-degree murder, and prosecutors initially aimed for the death penalty. But more than a year later, Frank accepted a plea deal to avoid execution, life in prison without parole. For Makayla's family, it was justice, but not closure. Final Re-Hung. End of Part 4. Makayla's story exposes a painful truth. Danger doesn't always arrive as a stranger in a white truck. Sometimes it sits across the table every day, hiding behind a familiar smile. The arrests, the trial, and the sentence brought a measure of justice for Makayla Meave. But for those who loved her, justice was only part of the story. The deeper wound was the empty space she left behind. For Makayla's mother, Barbara Harper, every morning begins the same way. She steps onto her porch, looks at the sun rising over the quiet Oklahoma fields, and whispers a simple message into the wind. "I miss you, baby." The pain of losing a child never fades. Barbara visits the spot where Makayla was found, just off a country road, near the drainage pipe that became her final resting place. There, she has placed crosses, flowers, and wind chimes that catch the breeze. "This is where she was," she says softly. Makayla's older sister, Andrea, still sleeps with Makayla's favorite blanket folded beside her. Some nights, she lies awake imagining the sound of her sister's laugh. "She was just my sister," Andrea says. "She was my best friend. I looked up to her, even though she was the younger one." And then there are the children, a two she adopted, and the 4 little girls she helped raise. They lost the woman who cheered for them at every school event, who braided their hair before bedtime, who believed every child deserved to be protected. She was their safe place. Even in her own struggles, Makayla was a source of comfort for others. She dreamed of becoming a full-time teacher, working with children who needed stability and love. The kind of love she never stopped giving, that dream was stolen from her. But her legacy womaned in the months following her death. Barbara created an organization called Makayla's Purple Butterfly Foundation. Butterflies for transformation, hope, and the belief that love continues beyond the physical world. The foundation's goal is simple but powerful: to protect others from the silent dangers Makayla faced. Lieutenant Dakota Black, who worked tirelessly on the case, still carries Makayla with her. "I've been through bad relationships, too. I think about that every day." For Dakota, Makayla's case wasn't just another file. It was a reminder of how easily abuse can hide behind closed doors, how quickly manipulation can turn into violence, how silence can become deadly, and for the entire community of Maycomb, the tragedy became a turning point. People talk more openly now about warning signs, about controlling behavior, about the importance of reaching out when something doesn't feel right. Makayla's story broke the silence. Her life, though cut short, continues to inspire conversations that could save someone else's. In the end, Makayla wasn't defined by the cruelty of what happened to her. She was defined by her compassion, her strength, and the way she gave everything she had to others. Sunflowers were her favorite. Bright, bold, always reaching toward the light. Those who knew her say she was the same. Final arrow, message, Makayla Meave deserved a lifetime of sunflowers she loved. Though her life was stolen, her light remains. And as long as her story is told, honestly, bravely, and with love, she will continue to protect others, just as she always tried to do.